All right, good evening and welcome to the January 5th, 2023 Scarborough Board of Education public meeting. Diane, can we call the attendance, please?
Sure. Miss Gammon? Here. Mr. Kelleher?
Present.
Miss Leong?
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Here.
Mr. Mayorino?
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian?
Here.
Mr. Peony Huff?
Here.
Miss Bertulia?
Here.
And Mr. Shumway?
Here.
Thank you. Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes.
Can we just check to make sure the video is on Zoom enabled?
Yeah, I had done that already.
Thank you. All right, agenda item 4.0 are adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments this evening?
No adjustments this evening.
Right, perfect. Agenda item 5.0 is public comment on agenda items. Is there anyone here wishing to make public comment tonight? Perfect. All right, so go ahead and come on up to the microphone. As a reminder, with making public comment, just address your comments to me as the chair. Please, if you wouldn't mind to get started identifying yourself using your full name.
Kevin Rodriguez.
Perfect, thank you for joining us tonight. So you have 3 minutes to make your public comments. If you could limit it to that, our thing isn't working. So
Sure.
we'll just kind of monitor that. Kelly will monitor the time for us, but if you could keep it within 3 minutes.
So the comment that I have is that there are several parents that I'm here representing that would like to see committee meetings be recorded so that we can know what's happening in committee meetings when we can't make it here. That's the request. So
Perfect, thank you.
that's all.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there anybody on the remotely interested in making public comment? You can raise your little hand if so. All right, seeing no others, I will close public comment this evening. Agenda item 6.0 is our board operating protocols. We'll just go through these. If we could pull up the slide deck, Diane. Thank you. We'll go through these in batches. I think it's likely easier to do it that way. All right, so these are the first three. So essentially what we would be doing, just to kind of make sure everybody understands the process here, we're going to talk about them now. We can certainly make any updates as we would like during this discussion. And then later on under new business, we'll vote on the updated protocols as we've agreed to. So right now is not an action item. The action will come later in the evening. So the first is the board will represent the needs and interests of every student in our district. We will stay flexible, endeavor to meet the needs of every student while advocating for adequate and appropriate resources. So are there any comments on that? Either updating, changing, deleting, keeping it the same?
This is what it's been, correct? We're not changing. This isn't new. It's what we've been working with.
Yes, so good point. Thank you, John. These are the 13 board operating protocols that have in some form, one form or another, carried over from board to board to board. And so the 13 that are in front of us right now are what we had voted on last year. Yes, and so we would just be making any updates that this board would like to make. Thank you for that, John. I mean, I'm comfortable with one staying the same. I think that's really the core of our mission. So we are really here to represent the needs of all of our students. So I don't personally have any changes.
I'm okay with line one.
My only thought is, I don't know if it fits on number 1 or number 3. Maybe it fits better under number 3 about stakeholders and just assuring family involvement and that families are important and need to be involved in decisions with their children. So I don't know where that would fit, and if people may or may not agree with me. But I don't know if that needs to be spelled out specifically anywhere.
Can I ask you, when you say family involvement, what do you actually mean by that?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, just making sure that parents are aware of what's going on with their child at school. So, that there's just, it's in the news a lot about parents not being made aware of certain issues with their children. And so just making sure that there aren't parents are aware, for lack of better words, I guess. But yeah, it needs to be a parent-school discussion, in my opinion.
I think as you indicated, I think maybe there's other sections that would probably a better discussion could be had around that. I think this one really is a key to the mission of saying like, we're here for students. And then I think there's other places where that we can have a more like a robust discussion around the language about that. But number 1 seems fine as is to me.
I agree with number 1 as well. I'm just wondering where it fits.
Jillian, did you have a comment that
I would just echo what Brayla said. I do think that there's a place for that. And I feel like there is I don't know, when we go through them more, maybe we can find it.
Maybe I overlooked it.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing number 1 stay the same. Okay. All right, so the second one is we will work to keep both the superintendent and fellow board members fully aware of current issues and concerns. Surprises to the board or the superintendent from either individual board members, the superintendent, or leadership council will be the exception, not the rule. We agree to ask the board chair or the superintendent to place an item on the agenda instead of bringing it up unexpectedly at the meeting. Is there any thoughts around this? Keeping it the same?
Yeah, I think that remains appropriate.
Agreed. All right. Okay, sounds like number 2, same. Okay, so number 3, the board values direct input from stakeholders in the decision-making process and will facilitate receiving feedback, meetings and or forums, et cetera, when the full board or committees feel it is needed. So to your point, maybe this is, Carolyn, maybe this is where the discussion I'm struggling a little bit because I think parents fall in stakeholders, and I'm almost wondering, because parents, the community, anybody is welcome to attend any of our committee meetings, right? Or our board members, and they're absolutely welcome to participate at any time. And we welcome feedback at all times, but I'm almost wondering, if maybe what you're saying is more of a policy conversation. I guess I'm struggling a little.
No, it's good. And maybe it's just, I guess I want to make sure that family is clear. And maybe there's point 14 or something. I'm not sure. But you're right. That's why when I said number 3, I'm like, well, it's probably part of stakeholders as well. But based on all the things that you hear in the news, I just want it to be clear that family input is important.
So I think, to your point, Shannon, I agree. I think this is more maybe something that's visited in policy, only because this is what we're talking about tonight is specifically about how we are operating as a board.
Yeah.
But we can go back into policy and, find where those lines fit, because I do agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's important, but I think that's more of a policy related.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
think.
I agree too. I think that perhaps, we can put an emphasis on stakeholders in policies, which almost all directly impact students. And, perhaps we can add to this and say that, we will have that in mind when we're generating policies or addending them.
Is there any other conversation around 3?
As far as 3 goes, I'm comfortable with the language currently. I just said, as far as number 3 goes, I'm comfortable with the language so far.
I agree with that.
All right, so if we can go on to the next slide. Here's our next 3. All personnel complaints and criticisms received by the board or its individual members will be directed to the superintendent. While the board is eager to listen to constituents and staff, each inquiry to individual members of the board is to be referred to the person who can properly and expeditiously address the issue, or to the superintendent. Board members agree that significant feedback obtained on an individual basis will be shared with all other board members. Do we have any thoughts on this one? Anybody have any thoughts on
I
this?
think that's worded really well. And I know we've talked about this in the past as well, so
Yeah.
I like that exactly the way it is.
Is there any other comments about that? About 4? All right. Number 5, the board will emphasize planning, policymaking, and communication rather than becoming involved in the management of the schools. So this is really that, keeping that 30,000 foot approach versus the boots on the ground, which is really Jeff and Diane's role. Are we all good on number 5? Any thoughts on that? Okay. All right, number 6, the board will address its effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation and by addressing itself to any improvement opportunities identified. I think there might be a missing word there. Oh, I guess not. Just-
I had a couple of questions about that one.
Yeah.
I'm not against self-evaluation and making sure that we take a opportunity of, all opportunities to improve. I just sort of, it's very esoteric. What does that mean? And what does that look like? Like, what does this procedure mean? Like, do we do a self-evaluations? Do we have a retreat where how do we, like, what's the criteria? How do we evaluate our effectiveness? I think is important, but it seems very, vague.
Yeah.
Very vague.
Yeah.
Like procedures don't really benefit from being vague.
Yeah.
So I'm not against self-improvement and self-evaluation. I think it's important, but I don't know what that means. And that's probably because I haven't been here very long, so I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so this process typically is the end of summer, like start of fall. So really right before the 3 of you came on board, right? Like as we're ending a year and as we move to this new schedule, for lack of a better word, or terms, right? Now that we're going to be on this new election term, I imagine that those yearly evaluations will also need to move as well to correlate with when a term would end in the future, right? So now we would be looking at maybe like a May or June. So, but what the process is that we have a self-evaluation form that we have used for the last couple of years. It's taken from materials that we've been given through the Maine School Board Association, and everybody on the board gets their own copy and is able to self-evaluate. The results come back in, we compile them all, and then we do meet to discuss the whole about the overall evaluation of the board. So from everybody's perspective, so everybody has an opportunity to provide feedback, and then we have an opportunity as a group to sit down and really talk about what those results are and what people's thoughts are.
And just one follow-up, and this may be to Carolyn's concern, or part of it. Is there any, like, do we ever survey the community? I know there is an elective process that is part of the evaluation process, for lack of a better word. But is there any intermediary where we survey the community or look at a wider feedback about what they think that we're doing or how we're handling the position? Or is it just self-evaluation? And both have value, like both have value. And I just, again, my question was like, I don't, like, this sounds great. What is that, like, where does rubber meet the road? What does that look like?
We did not, oh, no, go ahead. No, please. Everybody talk.
I think when it says self-evaluation, you're not going to evaluate yourself. We're going to be evaluating what we think how the board did as a whole. How did we do handling all these situations? So not how did I personally handle anything, because I'm just me. We all work as a board, so it's all going to be based on, do we think we were effective or ineffective in certain areas? And there was a wide variety of ways that we thought we were effective and we weren't effective. And we, obviously will focus on what we need to improve upon and doing for the community, not how did I do, how did you do, how did Jenna do, especially Jillian, we got to worry about her. But so it's more, I think, I don't know if that's clear for everybody, but it's much more that than you worrying about how you're doing. Did I get my meeting minutes done? No, it's how are we handling everything that we're supposed to be doing?
I think maybe to make that line a little bit more clear, then maybe to add like aligning with the board goals that we set for ourselves. Because that's kind of how we did it. We looked at the goals that we had set, then we rated how well we did on each of those goals, and that's what we assess. So when we meet again to kind of rediscuss these goals, we can align our self-evaluation along with that.
Do you think that you would like to see, like maybe may include soliciting community feedback? I mean, I do, the community has an opportunity to weigh in a lot, through email and public comment. Is there some way you think that we could promote that more or word this to encourage that?
I just didn't know what it meant. Like I know what the words mean. but,
Yeah.
Like
Together?
that sentence was like, could
Okay.
mean anything. So like, how do we fulfill that stuff? I mean, we could fill out a yes, I like myself, pass the note down, like we've assessed our, self-assessments are tricky because and I do them at work. So like, I understand processes and I'm like, what is this process? But I think, John, thank you so much. You actually really clarified for me. I think that's very helpful. I think to tie it to the goals, that would make it clear. Because I'm like, oh, so that's what we're tied to. I know where to find the goals. Now I know what we're evaluating ourselves on. Now I know sort of how to orient myself.
And what if we, where it says self-evaluation, if it says the board will assess itself, its effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation or what board evaluation? I don't know if that makes any difference where it makes it clearer for people to just, instead of self, where you think of an individual or the board, you think of us as a whole.
Yeah, I bet.
That's good.
Yeah, the collective effectiveness in alignment with our goals.
So, Jenna, I hope you're writing that down. And so when we get to voting, you can offer an amendment. Thank you.
Writing, but I don't know if it's going to be the correct verbiage.
I think I heard the board will assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation aligned with the goals. Is that what you said, Jillian?
Yeah.
Okay. And by, I would take out the itself, by addressing any improvement opportunities identified.
Let me type this. All right.
Tell me if you want me to
Repeat.
try again.
No, you could just repeat it.
Sure.
That way, because I can type faster than I can write.
Okay.
All right, the
The
board
bo-
will assess
Its collective effectiveness
effectiveness.
by yearly self-evaluation.
Yep.
I'm looking at Jillian to make sure I get this next part right. Tied to the annual goals or in alignment with the annual goals.
In alignment. So
And by addressing any improvement opportunities identified.
and by addressing any
Improvement
improvement
opportunities identified.
All right, I'm gonna read this out loud, see if I got this right. So the board will assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation in alignment with the annual goals and by addressing any improvement opportunities identified. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Are we good with that? Moving on to number 7 then? Okay. Number 7 is the board will set clear goals for themselves and the superintendent. The board and superintendent will set clear goals for the Scarborough School Department. So I kind of wanted to hear, Jeff, your thoughts on this one. Because I do think the board, I think our goal and our mission is to set goals for ourselves and to set goals for Jeff, but I think Jeff's job is to set goals for the school department. And so this one I get hung up on a little bit. I'm just wondering if you thought it could be reworded or what your thoughts were.
I mean, the two things are separate, so I like that the board is setting goals. But then there have to be separate goals, I think, that are specific to me as superintendent as part of the yearly evaluation.
Right.
So I think delineating those two, but then recognizing that the two ought to be aligned. So just language that would, delineate between the two and then ensure that they're aligned. Because I mean, ultimately, both sets of goals are meant to establish a vision and a direction for the whole school department and for the district. That makes sense.
Yeah. So do you feel like it's almost like the board will set clear goals for themselves, period? The board will set clear goals for the superintendent, period, and maybe undo the school department side? But I do like, I'm thinking out loud as I'm talking, so walk through the process with me here. I guess I do like the part about it setting, like the sentence being there, that it sets the tone and the mission and vision for the district. So maybe that's a piece of it as well. I guess I just feel like when I read that second part of it, I'm left with the impression that the board is working with you, Jeff, to set goals for your leadership team. And that's not what we're doing. We're setting goals for you, and then you're then working with your staff. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm struggling with that second sentence a little bit.
But doesn't the first sentence sound like we're setting goals for each of us individually and then the superintendent? Would it not be the board itself rather than themselves? Because we're working as one. So, because this way it reads like we each have individual goals, but we don't, because we are just one board.
Yeah.
And individually, we're, powerless, I guess we would say, because we are. So I think maybe that, if you're just reading it, it sounds like there's a whole bunch of goals for a whole bunch of people, when it's just really the board and the superintendent.
Right.
Right, and there should be something in there linking superintendent goals to evaluation, the yearly evaluation of the superintendent.
And I think what it's trying to get at is making sure that the goals that you set for the school department are in alignment
Right.
with the board's goals. So maybe there's a better way of saying it, but I get what it's going for.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a better wordsmithing. Wordsmith?
Maybe we could wordsmith the beginning of the sentence to talk about setting goals and then have an A and a B, like the board for itself. And then the board or with the superintendent.
So I have, sorry, Jeff.
No, I was just thinking, as you were, I'm cutting you off, sorry about that. But, or even incorporating, board goals into number 6. And then make 7 exclusively about the superintendent superintendent's goals and evaluation.
I think that, I like that too.
That's exactly what I was
Oh,
gonna suggest.
Yeah,
Start number 6
Yeah.
that way, and then make number 7 about the super.
Yeah,
that's a good
the
idea.
board will set clear goals and will, and then
And we'll
we'll-
assess its collective effectiveness.
Yeah. With
And
an
that's
annual
why he's
self-
getting the
we'll
big
an- we'll
bucks.
we'll set goals annually and also have an annual self-evaluation, I think.
Right, so you're linking the board evaluation to goal setting
Right.
and then superintendent goal setting with evaluation. It's clean. 6 and 7.
So then our number 6 would be the board, are you ready, Jenna?
Yeah.
The
The
board,
board will set clear goals for itself,
You thought you
For
were done
itself,
with 6.
period. Or did you say?
no,
established?
the board will, yeah, and,
Yes. Okay.
yeah. The board will establish clear goals for itself and assess its effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation.
Can we say the board will set goals annually? I mean, just, I think that we want to make that clear, like, it's not like a running,
We get the same goals from 14 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
We're still working on it. Things have
sorry, I
changed.
thought I said
So-
annual.
no, it's.
Did
okay.
I say it? Okay.
Oh.
So the board will establish clear goals for itself and will assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation in alignment with the annual goals, annually reviewed goals.
So I think it's the board will establish annual goals and
It
assess its effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation. And then you can strike out the rest, like you
Okay.
just said.
Okay, so annual goals and by yearly evaluations. So then we are removing addressing any improvement opportunities identified.
No, I think that should stay. Okay, let me,
Okay.
I'm in my head, I'm going. Okay, so the board will establish annual goals, comma, assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation and address any improvement opportunities identified.
Okay,
How does that sound?
I think that sounds great.
so after I wordsmith this here. All right, I'm gonna read this out loud. It may not sound right until I read it. The board will establish clear goals, assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation in alignment with the annual goals for itself and will messed it up, and by yearly evaluations, addressing any improvement opportunities identified. Did I mess it up?
I think it goes
But I-
back and forth a little bit too much. Like, I think we should just talk about the goals, talk about the self-evaluation and the involvement rather than,
Yeah, I don't think you have to repeat the goal, the
Okay.
goals twice. So it would be the board will,
Establish and assess its collective effectiveness.
the board will establish annual goals, comma,
Okay.
assess its collective effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And then the part about the goals after that you can remove.
By yearly self-evaluation in alignment with the annual goals.
Yeah, I just think you can say it's assess its effectiveness by yearly evaluation, comma.
Okay. So now we're removing the alignment that was confusing Freyla originally.
No, the alignment was something we just. put in.
Okay,
The line shared and-
sorry.
Yeah, no, you're-
do you think we need to make that?
I think now it's too wordy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Me
so
too.
read it again, one more time.
It's kind of all out of sorts now. The board will establish annual goals. Assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation. And that's it. Addressing any improvement opportunities identified.
So yeah, it would just be and address any improvement opportunities.
All right. It's much shorter now. The
Okay.
board will establish annual goals, assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation, and address any improvement opportunities identified.
Sounds good.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
And that was number 6.
All right, so then number 7. So do we want to align the wording to be the same? So maybe the board will establish clear goals for the superintendent.
In alignment with overall mission. and
Yeah.
values.
Annual, yeah, establish. Yeah, so maybe have the exact same wording, right? But for the superintendent to take the place.
Okay. And then how did we want to have it align with school department?
How about this? The board will establish annual goals for their superintendent in alignment with the overall mission and values of the school district. And will evaluate the superintendent annually.
That sounded good.
Perfect.
Say that again.
The board will establish annual goals for the superintendent
Mhm.
in alignment with overall mission and values of the school district. And will evaluate the superintendent annually. I think that's sort of what encapsulates what Jeff said earlier, which I think we liked. And sort of what we just wrote.
That sounded great.
Does that feel good to you, Jeff? All right.
Okay, so we have an amendment for 6 and amendment for 7. All right, any other comments on that before we move on to 8? All right, number 8 is the chair will respond to emails, but may delegate a response to another member. Individual members, including the chair, may collaborate on responses when requested. Members who receive an email individually will forward the email to the other board members. You all feel good about this one?
This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
All right. Number 9, only the board as a whole has authority. We agree that individual board member that an individual board member will not take unilateral action. So to what John's mentioning earlier. Our authority is as a whole. Any comments here, suggestions for changes? All right. Number 10, while we encourage debate and differing points of view, we will do it with care and respect. Any comments or suggestions here? Right. Can we move to thank you. Number 11, the board recognizes that publicly discussing questions in meetings is important for transparency. We agree to move the question forward when discussion is concluded or becomes overly repetitive. Issues that require or lead to an in-depth discussion should be moved to a workshop session.
When you say move the question forward, does that mean to the next meeting or to, what does that, what does
that's a
that
good
mean? I'm
question.
just ignorant.
Yeah, no, that's a Robert's rules phrase. So it's moving the
Okay.
question to a vote. So if
Oh,
we're
okay.
just, essentially, it's a way to get out of if you're just going in circles, right? Like repetitively going in circles. It's a way to move it to the vote. That's a good question. Everybody seems good with that one. All right, number 12, executive sessions will only be used to discuss appropriate subjects. Board members will be held to the strictest confidentiality regarding executive sessions, subjects, and discussions. I just have a slight change here. It's not even appropriate subjects, it's actually legal, like within our legal boundaries. Yeah, so I don't like that it's, I think we can fix that up a little bit. So executive, maybe it's executive sessions will be held within the parameters of statute, within statutory parameters.
Yes, and typically the topic is it somewhat, that's usually listed somewhere, correct?
It's listed instead. Oh, the reasons why or what we're having it for?
Yes, what we're having it for.
Yeah.
S-
Yeah, we only have, I think there's only 4 permissible reasons that we can have an executive session. And so if we do have one, we actually just lift the language right out of the statute.
Okay.
So it would be for one of those, if we need, 6 reasons. So if we needed to discuss a personnel matter, if we needed to discuss an expulsion, if we need to discuss the sale and purchase of land, those very specific reasons only, to consult with our attorney. So when we have a reason, a legally permissible reason to hold an executive session, then yes, we use that statutory language right on the agenda.
Would it be worthwhile just putting in parens, like what those 6 things are? So if somebody's reading this, they'll know what they are. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I wonder if we could even link to the statute,
Oh, there you go.
like maybe
Yeah.
put the statute
Yeah.
in.
I think there's an easy fix. So all of these 5 topics are confidential under statute. So if you just say, executive sessions will only be used to discuss subjects that are protected by law. Because I was checking that all of these are confidential, like they're not by statutes with council. Consultation with council is it's protected as confidentiality, it's recognized in the rules. That
Mhm.
topics are discussed with your legal counsel can't be shared publicly by the legal counsel or by, the privacy belongs to actually the person who hires which would be the board collectively. Collective bargaining is protected as part of negotiations.
Mhm.
That's by rules again. Acquisition of real estate property, that's again negotiations. All of these are legally confidential, not subject matter. If you should have said by law, which are subjects that are confidential by law, I think you'd cover it.
So are you thinking we don't need the second sentence?
Where we're held with
No, we do.
Yeah, okay, I was gonna
We
say,
do.
yeah, I would not
Yeah.
be, I would not be okay with
So-
removing that.
No. The first person, so that you are fighting with appropriate. I like appropriate because to me that means lawful, but I have the wrong brain. I have like my brain, which is a lawyer's brain. So I think if you wanted to make it clear to everybody what appropriate means, which is sort of what I was thinking you're getting at, I think if you
Mhm.
say executive sessions will only be used to discuss subjects that were confidential by law.
I see what you're saying.
You've covered you covered the exceptions in case they expand or retract, which happens not very often occasionally. But I know the second sentence is vitally important because of that collective versus individual again. Because the confidentiality belongs to the board as a whole, official working within its proper authority. An individual member who would speak about something that happened in executive session outside of that collective is actually in violation
Mhm.
of whatever statute exception we're in.
And I like that, Freya, because appropriate can be very subjective.
Mhm.
And so that just makes it more concrete.
But if that's a concern, to you, that's your.
Yeah, that's my exact concern.
So the language that I written for number 12 is executive sessions will only be used to discuss subjects that are confidential by law. Board members will be held to the strictest confidentiality regarding executive session subjects and discussions. Sounds good?
That sound good? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you said, yeah, you're sorry. All right, anything else on number 12? All right, so number 13, we agree that committee chairs will act in good faith to schedule meetings which can be attended by the full committee as well as relevant staff. Committee chairs are responsible for providing agendas and to be published to the website. All committee meetings will be recorded and or live streamed whenever possible in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act laws. So I'll open the floor for discussion.
So when I read that, it sounds like we should be recording our committee meetings.
No, it's recorded and or live streamed.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So
Okay.
the
Yeah.
way that this has worked up until now is, in this conversation that we've had with, previous boards. Was all of our board meetings are already recorded and already available on the website, and YouTube. The conversation we had last year really surrounds the people that participate in our committee meetings. So you're really talking not necessarily about us, but we're really talking about your stakeholders, right? And how comfortable they feel with committee meetings being recorded. So, that's really what you're trying to get at. So where we fell last year is we have this live streaming option available that we've gotten from, thanks to COVID with Zoom. So some could be recorded, some could be live streamed. It's really up to the chair to decide and the committees to decide if they felt it would be, if it was necessary to record it. I think the situation that happens though, is that the situation we find ourselves in is that some meetings are recorded and some meetings aren't. And I mean, I have personal thoughts on it. I don't know that I'm Shannon Lindstrom or any of us really how are we to know what's important to a community member? A community member might find the communications meeting to be relevant to them and might feel that they want to watch it. A different community member might find that the building steering committee meeting is relevant to them and they might want it recorded. So that's where the struggle is when and I think this is what, to the public comment we had earlier, this is where we're finding ourselves, is that some are and some aren't, and there's not a consistent across the board thing that we're doing.
Yeah, but I think to your point as well, I think there's probably different people have different interests. So there's probably somebody in the community who's interested in each and every one of the committees, just may not be everybody's interested in every committee. And I think, I don't know, me personally, I feel like for transparency, and we got what, 3, 4, 5 emails over the past week or two about it as well. So I think people are interested and I think we should put it out there for them. And I just don't, I don't see what harm can come from it. I think it's good for the public. Transparency, they can see what we said. We can say, go see the meetings. That's exactly what we said. I just see only good coming from it.
So I agree with you. I think they should be all recorded. I feel like the bulk of our work comes from our committee meetings. And when we discuss it here, it's just whatever information that we're providing. And it's helpful for our community if they can't access our meetings at that time, they can access it at a later time. And so that they stay up to date with whatever they want to hear about. I think it also shows how we've come to certain decisions because they can see that we went through this exercise of thinking about these topics and bringing it forward. And I found it helpful for myself too, rewatching some of our meetings, even though I've attended them, just kind of hearing my own thoughts and what were my thought processes then and how they might have changed over time.
Jenna, I like your point about that's where a big chunk of the work gets done as opposed to, the higher level that we take here. So I think that is an important point to make so people can be, view that work that was done. More in the nitty gritty.
Can I ask what has there been pushback or was it just that because how it was written, people got to choose what they wanted and so it became inconsistent? Was it that certain people didn't want to do it for a particular reason or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would be remiss, and I'm sure Freyla is probably gonna want to speak to this. We do have members on some of our committees that are not comfortable with being recorded. They just are not, given the subject matter, given their experiences, the things that they're willing to share with a small group of individuals, but not necessarily the entire world. And so that's really, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think I can, because I spent a lot of time thinking about this one and going back and forth in my brain because first of all, I believe in transparency. I work for the government. I have for over a decade. Everything I do is recorded all the time. So like recording for me doesn't seem like a big deal. It seems like a really low bar, but I also am desensitized to it. And so I was thinking back sort of like what my process is. So what I do is I'm in court pretty much every day. That's where I'm recorded. And what really struck me was even in the court process, where there's a constitutional requirement to open proceedings that the public can view for the exact purposes that we're talking about here. We still have proceedings that are not recorded and they're not open to the public that happen in the course of that proceeding. It struck me today when I was thinking about this. I'm sitting in court, we go off the record and we go have a discussion about a topic where people can be frank and open. And I was trying to think about why, like, why do we not record that? Like, what's the value there? Because there is no, and I mean, this is my bias, but there is no more heightened scrutiny than when we put people in prison. So like, that's a liberty interest. If we're going to be, that transparency is critically important to our foundations of our society. And I believe very much in our system. So I was like, what is the value in going off the record here? So what do we tangibly get from that? And the answer is open and frank discussion. And so I haven't had an experience on a lot of committees here. I was then on the DEI committee since its inception. That's about 3 years. And the 3 years have been very different. I think I explained it as something like, completely chaotic. And the DEI committee is unruly. It's huge. There's so many members. It's like 20 members. There's different perspectives. They come from all over perspectives. You have parents, you have teachers, you have staff, administrators, you have students. And they are participate and they have things to say about their personal lives. And I'll put this back on the board a little bit, not pejoratively, but when it was founded, the first year we were involved in a very structured set of meetings. And we were asked to discuss very sensitive topics about our personal experiences in life. And people cried during some of these meetings. And so to a person, that group of people, and I don't speak for them, we were not able to hold a meeting. So I haven't surveyed them. I didn't really think it was like my place to do that. But like the 2 times this has been raised, there's been a lot of concern about that. And the concern stems from 2 aspects. One of which is we don't know as people, like, what is the issue with the agenda that sets out the meeting notes that are, we have copious notes about everything that's discussed that are published and are available on the website. It's live streamed. So there's availability, but there are concerns from community members and students, and particularly the students, which are the ones that I'm most concerned about, that they don't want their voices preserved forever on YouTube or on Zoom or any other forum. Forever on things that they say right now, necessarily, particularly when they're talking about emotionally charged subjects. There's a diligent record that's kept. There's meeting notes kept every single time I've heard the community feedback. I've gotten all the emails. We want every subcommittee meeting recorded. We want to know what's going on. Great. We can't make it to every meeting. I hear you. I've skipped 2 meetings in 3 years. I know what that commitment takes. I work a full-time job in Augusta. And I commute, I don't have remote work options. So I know what a hardship it is to make it to those meetings. It's very difficult to do. But if it's something you prioritize, you make it work. And so that's the thing. And so when you have a community member committee where people give up their time and they don't want to be recorded to do the work, and they're telling you they can't do the work if they're being recorded, I question why this board is suddenly going to require that. And sort of what impact is that going to have on their work? And I don't know. This is speculative. I don't know what's going to happen. So I feel torn because personally, I don't have an issue with recording. I'll have no issues being recorded here. I'm recorded all the time. Like, I assume I'm recorded. But being sensitive, again, the community members, but the people that are really the most concerning to me are the students. When you have minors whose image and voices are being captured. And at least one of the emails were pejorative to some of the members of that committee. And I have an absolute issue with people being pejorative against students, demeaning language being used to describe them. I don't find that acceptable. Even if you disagree with people, which I expect that we will disagree, that I hope that people disagree, that's okay. But it's not okay to demean people or make them feel bad about their points of view. I think it's really important that we work to common ground, which is the purpose of that committee. So I hesitate as a board member in this role with this hat on, looking at that committee who's saying we can't do our work and saying, we don't really care that this interfere with your work, figure it out. But I understand parents want to know what's going on. I would like to know what is, like, is there a medium ground? Is there a way we can mediate that? Is there a way to meet that need? What is insufficient with the notes? Because there are notes. What's insufficient, making the meetings is hard, but it's live streamed. It's on the computer. Most people have that accessible. It's also in person if you can't access the computer. So I'm hesitant I don't understand what is being missed, or what people are afraid is being missed, or the concerns that are being missed. I don't feel those have been explained to me to understand, like, what is tangibly being lost, not being present at the meeting, that's not gleaned through the notes. And, I hesitate asking community members who have volunteered, who've said unequivocally, we will quit or we won't participate, we'll lose the committee. I mean, if the purpose is to completely end the DEI community, this is a good start. And I'm not being chicken little, like people have threatened to walk off the plane. I would find that tragic. I think there's a place, I'm not sure. Again, it's been chaotic. The first year was crazy. The second year we didn't meet. The third year, the meetings have started, and then they've reconstituted themselves, and they've been very slow to get started. They haven't accomplished a whole lot. And the other thing is, every substantive thing that come out of that committee and discussed. So the idea that there's some secret stuff going on, I don't find that realistic. And I would want to know if there's a way to make sure that the committee can work and also give people and the public an access to the information they need and they want. I don't think we're not trying to hide anything. And that's the best I can do, is sort of trying to understand the committee's perspective and trying to speak for them. I'm sure I'll get feedback about how I mess that up. And sort of my own perspective, but trying to sort of like understand everyone. I don't think the DEI committee is trying to keep secrets. But that's where it's in. So I do believe it would materially impact and interfere with the committee's work. So if that is, the intended purpose, I believe it would be an unintended consequence of a decision to mandate recording. And my most fears, we lose students on the committee, and I don't think that committee is valuable without the students. Or I don't think it's as valuable. I think then you have parents and staff members telling students and schools information that we really want and need student feedback for. And that committee is reliant on students to be robust.
I will say that I mean, we do have a culture of taking small sound bites and really maybe using them inappropriately or in a way that is harmful to individuals rather than having conversations. I do see that point of view. The only thing is that if it is live streamed, somebody could record that too. So there's like that, I'm having the same struggle you're having is what I'm trying to say with that particular topic. I do have a question. Is there any administrative strain on or increased need with increased recording or processing or just a question, something that maybe we need to think about?
Yeah, I mean, logistically, it's more challenging and, I think a little bit to Freyla's point, I mean, before COVID, when we started, having remote meetings, the idea of recording every subcommittee meeting, really wasn't even really a topic of conversation. You have notes from each meeting as was articulated and even every subcommittee meeting and committee meeting is open for people to attend, in person. And then obviously we go online, it gets a little different and it's easier. Okay, well, if we click the record button now, the entire meeting is recorded. So if you're having an online Zoom meeting, then the issue of whether or not to record is pretty easy to address. It's when you're having the return to in person and all of those things where it gets, a little a little more challenging to make sure if you're gonna say, and I get the all or nothing thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's tricky when there are some meetings that are being live streamed and recorded and other meetings that aren't.
Mhm.
You know, and so if you were to say, okay, every single committee meeting, and then there's differences between like a standing meeting or an advisory committee, like a DEI committee that includes members, participants of the committee that aren't board members, right? As opposed to a sub, you know, like the finance
Mhm.
committee meeting or those kind of things. So there would be potentially an opportunity to delineate between those two, whether it's an advisory committee to the board or whether it's a subcommittee that's, you know, comprised of just board members. But having all of them recorded and live streamed does, you know, does present some additional challenge.
I almost feel like it requires all of the meetings to be hybrid. Which
Right.
we're kind of there at some level anyway. I do think we have some leeway. We know negotiations is never recorded. That is not a committee that by law can be recorded. So no, not all committee meetings will be recorded. It's just legally not possible. I have struggled, I have thought about almost nothing else for the better part of a week. I have struggled with the exact same things Freyla says. I've been, this will really be the first year that I've not been on the DEI committee since its inception. I know the subject matter that's discussed, and it's not that there's secretive things happening. It's that human beings are talking about their very real life experiences, and those human beings are children. We're not talking about only adults. We're talking about 15 and 14 and 16 and 13-year-olds, talking about experiences they've had. And I am and I have been very uncomfortable with asking a child to stand up in front of a camera and tell the world their lived experiences. It's very difficult for me to do that. I value transparency. I value our community being involved. I know we have a lot of things on the docket that are coming up that are important to the community members. Like I said, I have a very hard time trying to determine what is important and what is not. But I also feel like if we go back to our operating protocol, number one, we're here to protect the students. And by asking students to stand in front of a camera and explain themselves to everybody, it doesn't feel right to me. So I have a very hard time. And I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it is that we talk about, is it an advisory committee, an advisory to the board committee, or is it a committee made of board members? I have no problem being recorded either. I have no problem. But that's me, right? That's me. And I will say what I need to say. And, you know, like you said, the ramifications are the ramifications. If I hear feedback that my conversation or my points of view aren't good, then I'll readily accept that. But I'm an adult and I've taken this position on knowing that, right? And I know that the kids do as well, but I still feel like that's different. It's different.
I fall apart when I have to talk on camera. We do have these wonderful, brilliant students on our board that are part of our board that are recorded along with us too. So, I mean, that's where, I mean, that's the argument that's hard for me on both sides. I can see very clearly both sides of that, and I do worry about that committee falling apart. I guess I just don't know how we discern. I mean, we would have to call out that when it's not appropriate, for instance, when there's negotiations. I have questions about the communications committee when we are discussing the Spotlight Awards. Like, we're discussing individual people and I don't know how appropriate that is necessarily to be literally stating people's names and everything. that we would have to differentiate some things there. Not that I have, I mean, there's nothing negative ever being said
Absolutely.
in those,
Right. Mhm.
but, you know, I mean, you're discussing individual employees. And so I would need some clarification in this for stuff like that. Again, I have no problem if we want to say, well, we're just going to use initials, or we're going to all agree that we're talking about person 1, 2, 3, or 4, you know.
Yeah.
That would be fine too. But we need some clarification with that stuff like that. And I don't know if this is the place for it or how we lay that out.
I'd also like to add, I think as a student going on to the school board exactly, like I knew what I was getting into. I knew that I was going to be sitting in front of an audience, and you also, I think we go on representing students. So as opposed to the DEI committee where you're like your own personal experiences, I know that like I can chime in with my own experiences, but I don't necessarily have to share like difficult things that I've gone through in our school community.
So I'm just thinking, Freyla, to your question about, you know, is there a middle ground? Because I think it's important to have that information out there, because that's probably the committee most people are interested in watching. Or one of them, I should say. My finance committee is probably pretty boring for most. I
Oh,
love
you
it.
wait,
but-
it's coming. You wait. You will have 100 views before you know it.
Right. Oh, my goodness. Probably not many likes on that. But, yeah, I'm just thinking, you know, to your point earlier about, is there a middle ground? And I'm racking my brain to find that, like, is there, you know, the first 5 or I don't know how the flow goes. Is there 5 or 10 minutes you can devote to the kids speaking, and that I don't, or is it just all kind of intermingled?
That committee is very chaotic. There are 3 chairs who run it. One's a student, one's a staff member, one's a parent. So no, I don't think there could be like the designated that would be functional. I don't like, to be honest, I think that would be a challenge that would be too hard for them to overcome just structurally. And I think we asked them to do a lot to throw, like, to put it together. I think when the board kind of changed the chair structure, which I think was a good decision. I think we also at that point, and I know it wasn't we at that point, but we now,
Mhm,
when that decision was made, I think we put some people in positions that they may need to grow into. Okay, so like, it's not positions that they didn't come with the experience. They certainly didn't understand or know that that's what they were gonna be asked to do. And you know, the way that we nominated chairs, you could nominate yourself, you could nominate someone else. And it was like this group decision. So I don't know that they could organize effectively. And the other thing is, would then cut kids out of conversations that they might want to be a part of. So I get concerned about that. My question would be, what can we do with the record? Like, we have a pretty robust note-taking record. We have a good note taker. I know she does notes. We have a running agenda with the notes in it. I review them when we have them. So like, what could we add so that parents and community members who are interested and want to be a part of it and who can't make the meeting, because of course they are welcome to the meeting. If they can't be there, but they want to know what was discussed, like, what could we add? Is there something missing? Like, I don't understand what the, like, I know that they are not watching live stream later on discussion. And I understand that there's, that's not the same as reading meeting notes. And minute meeting notes can be great and they can be useless. Like, I don't think these are particularly terrible, but is there a way that we can put like, what information can we put that would satisfy or at least address the genuine concerns that community members need to know what is going on during those committee meetings? I'll be honest. I think that in some ways it would be helpful to record the meetings. Like, I think, like, I don't think that would be all negative. The committee members, I don't believe feel that way. I think it would actually be helpful in some ways. And I think the community, I think there'd be gains to be had, but that's my personal opinion, as a committee member. They don't want to be, and I don't know that the committee will continue. I don't think it'll continue the way it has been if it is recorded. And I don't know what that looks like. So I don't know. But the question is, is there a middle ground? The obvious one is the notes or the record that is kept, that is faithfully kept and published and available publicly. And what is it about? I don't understand what it's about. Like, if the meeting notes were very skimpy or one-liners or were just headings, I could look at them and be like, I understand what's missing here. Let's do that. But is there that, like, can there be instructions given to the committee, maybe as part of amending the charter even to really make it official, that they must keep detailed notes? And that's one of the struggle with those emails and the structure of public comment, which is not a dialogue, which is appropriate.
Yep.
But one of the problems, you can't ask, so what? So what do you need? Like, what are you missing? What can we give you to satisfy you, but also have it function? And that, I don't know how to build that bridge because I don't understand what's lacking, but I'm also there.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, I'm there. So
yeah,
I
I
met
think-
the meeting.
Yeah, I think that's because I've looked through the notes and I find them a bit vague, or for me, it invites questions. I'm like, I don't have context for that. What does it mean when ABC Club does something?
Yeah.
It was like, what in the world does that mean? And I'm not there, so I don't have context. And I think that's probably just the biggest thing. Maybe the notes are great. I find them a bit vague for me, but it's because I'm not there. So I don't have the context that goes around that conversation. So like, you get bits and blurbs of the conversation, but you just don't have the whole picture. And that's just one person's feedback.
I'm not sure you'd have a lot more clarity being there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but you would have the context and you'd have the whole, and I'm not disparaging to the DI committee, it's a great committee, but these discussions have, sometimes you have 15 people chime in and they say the same thing. And it looks like there was a 45-minute discussion with 2 lines, but it's they're positive and affirming, but it's not a committee that's run like any other. I've never been on a committee or a board or anything like this in my life, like the direction. And when we'll get to my updates, but one of the goals in the meeting.
Yeah.
In the next meeting is to set goals for the committee that are like actionable, that like fulfill the charge so that there is movement forward. Cause I think it looks like we're not going anywhere, but I don't think you're missing anything.
Yeah.
Well, no,
You might
I'm
be
not
right.
disparaging the committee, like the committee was not in a position to formulate an act, and the format was very discombobulating for someone who is comfortable in being, I'm flexible, like I understand. It's hard to get kind of feet under, get it up and going, teach the people who are now running the committees who they're not board members. They did not sign up. They've never run professional boards in my knowledge. They've done a tremendous job. They've stepped into roles that they're very uncomfortable stepping into. Like, our chairs are not like, I want to be a chair. Our chairs are like, I will try to do this.
Assistant leaders.
But yeah, they're
Yes.
wonderful
Yes.
people
Yeah,
and they
absolutely.
give a lot of time and heart to this
Yeah.
mission. Like, I have a lot of respect for them. And I want to make sure that they have enough support from this board to do their job. That's something that I think is very important. But I don't think that, I think it took probably 5 or 6 meetings to just formulate a procedure to make a decision. Like, and I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, literally they were very painstaking. And I really hope the public, I wish the public could see it.
Yeah.
Like, I think parts of it are maddening, but parts of it are beautiful. And like, it's very deliberative process. It takes forever.
Yeah.
But again, you have 20 people. It's not a professional board, not that it's a professional board, but it's not a board of people who are like board members who are like
Right.
signed up to be board members. It's community members going together, trying to fulfill a charge that's rather vague in the best way they know how, and they're doing the best they can. Yeah, like, I believe that.
Can I ask if is there value in recording, but not with video. So in a sense, if you're live streaming, obviously people are looking at something, but does it protect the kids that we're talking about? If, say, the camera's only on me the whole time because I'm the one on the board, but it's picking up everything in the room, so you're not seeing anybody else, if that's what some of the concern is specific to that committee. But it allows everybody to get a feel at home if they couldn't be there, to hear some of the tones and of people's conversations, but people don't have to identify each other. And maybe that becomes part of, I don't know, standing protocol, that when students speak or anybody there, they could just say, hi, I'm a teacher, right? They don't need to share their name necessarily, because quite honestly, I don't know if that's as important, but I've never been in one of your committee meetings before, so.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that would work for 1 or 2 meetings, but I think it would be very clear, it would be clear within a few weeks who was talking at whichever point in time. And the context, what they were saying would be so specific that you would know who they are. Like, you would know who they are almost immediately. And it is because most everyone on that committee, not everyone, but most everyone on that committee, does have a specific identity that's not the typical Scarborough identity. Whether that's a race, ethnic background, there's religious differences, LGBTQ, I think you said race, like there's like the whole spectrum of identities. And so when you talk about your identity in that committee, it's not hard to identify who. We have a limited number of African American students. We have a limited number of East Asian students, and our populations are growing. And this committee is about making sure that people feel welcome in the community. But I think we would be, I don't think the committee has antipathy towards groups that are different. I think the purpose of the community is to bring in different perspectives, to make sure that everyone is able to be in the school community comfortably and welcoming in ways that people don't like. Everyone believes that the intentions are good most of the time, that a lot of the harm that's done is really unintended and unintentional. And sort of how do you work through that? And the problem with that is if you call something out that happened, the person who's called out, if this is public and watches it later, they feel extremely defensive, and that opportunity to have a discussion might be lost because they're going to feel like under attack, and that would be detrimental to the work of the committee.
So this seems like a situation that number 11 comes into play, or issues that require or lead to in-depth discussions should be moved to a workshop session. Is that something that we can do where we decide, okay, we're going to go with it as this, we'll talk about it at a later date, revisit it. We can always bring it back and say, all right, we've decided to change this. Because I don't know if we're going to convince anybody right now, or we're just going to keep going in circles or keep playing tennis, going back and forth. It's just, I don't know if anybody's going to be happy with.
Offer an opportunity to the public. So we've been getting all these emails, but I agree with some comments that have been said that nobody has necessarily, at least from my takeaway, said why the notes aren't sufficient, for instance. So what else could be put in there? And maybe that gives the public a chance to follow up with us again. And then we have that meeting, and maybe this becomes a more productive conversation because we have the input that we kind of are looking for, which is from the community.
Is there any way that we can, to these 2 points, agree on maybe the majority of committees, either one way or another, being recorded, and set this particular topic aside for this particular committee in a workshop? Because this is, I'm not sure. I feel like there's different subjects here happening.
Yeah, and maybe it's, I think that's John and Brian and Jillian. I think those are very good points. And maybe what we could do is, I'm gonna think out loud again. What if that we would have to push this to February workshop, which, is fine. I just, because January, we have something, I think, our goal setting actually in January. So, which is our next board meeting. So we would push it to a February meeting. But in the meantime, to your point, Jillian, what if we just record meetings that are kind of like combining what Jeff said and your point? Record meetings that are board members only. So that would be finance, comms, policy, long range.
All of
All
our
of them
others.
except DEI and negotiations, of course, cannot be recorded. Building is recorded.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah, so
Buildings.
that would be the only two that would be on negotiations and DEI. And then we can workshop it. And really try to, come up with an answer that's tangible, and hopefully people in the community that are here or that are watching that have feedback on what's missing can then reach out and let us know via email what they feel is missing. I know, I think the emails and the comments we've seen, I think there is some confusion about board meetings. Board meetings have always been recorded and have always been available. So that's we could set that one aside in the emails. And then I think there's a secondary concern that public comment is not being taken at, I think that was the email you were referring to, at the committees. And that is a separate issue as well. So committees, as we've talked about amongst ourselves, when you have a committee, the committee chair is the person who is responsible for determining if they're going to take public comment or not. To Freyla's point, the DEI committee in particular is really, I would say, still in their formation phase since we've switched who will chair that committee. So I still think they're learning and they're growing and they're finding their way, quite frankly. And so I think that's kind of what you're saying in a shortened way, right? Like when they talk about how it's big, it's unruly, it's a lot of people there. And by unruly, I mean large. There's a lot of people there, it's a lot of opinions. So I do think that we could workshop it. And in the meantime, just because I know we have things coming up that are of interest, if everybody is okay with recording the committees we have, maybe that is the best way to do it. And we'll come back to DEI and, well, negotiations we won't come back to, but DEI we can workshop.
And Fraley, maybe you could ask your committee or the committee too, if they have suggestions. Yeah, I love Brian's suggestion. I wouldn't have a clue who's talking. So I really wouldn't. Yeah, maybe there's something, maybe they have a brilliant idea. So,
I would be happy to take this
Yeah.
to them. Again, I was disappointed that our meeting this month was canceled because I think that I was definitely gonna bring this up to sort of
Okay.
get their opinion and was unable to do that.
yep, no, that'd be great.
Okay, so for right now, for purposes of our vote, I'm thinking that what I'm hearing is we leave 13 alone for now until February. I'm gonna throw a wrench in that now because outside of the recording piece, there is one thing I wanted to talk about. The second sentence that says committee chairs are responsible for providing agendas to be published to the website. I think I would like that sentence to be a little bit more robust, like by times indicated by policy. Because we've got to be, and I think you all know that that's one of my big things, like making sure we're posting in a timely manner, because that is how the community stays involved and that is how they know to come to our meetings. And if we're not providing that proper notice, quite frankly, we can't be holding the meetings because we're out of compliance with our own rules. So I would, and we can save that one for February when we can just update this at one time, but just to maybe kind of keep that in mind. Yeah. No, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
no, I was just, no, okay, let's.
All right, so we'll leave it as is with the understanding that the committees outside of DEI negotiations will be recorded until February workshop. Okay.
And do we want to maybe add that we will publish our minutes for these?
Yeah, so maybe that's another, would you be okay with keeping that until February? We can kind of flesh out the whole issue.
No, I mean like agendas and minutes for the rest of the committees that.
Oh, yeah.
Per policy.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Within the, per policy, within the timelines. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So it's right now is okay. All right. Thank you for that. That was a good discussion. All right. Agenda item 7.0 is the superintendent report. So I'll turn this over to Jeff.
All right, super fast, I promise. We're only 5 days into the new year, so happy New Year, everyone. I hope everyone had a nice winter recess, winter break, and is back at it here. For almost a month now, the Leadership Council has really been digging in and getting ready for budget season. So I just wanted to give the board just an update, kind of where we are and the public in terms of FY24 budget development. First of all, we've had at least 2 meetings now as a Leadership Council at the latter part of December, and then the first day back actually this week, really starting to build the FY24 budget development calendar, starting to look at current enrollment and forecasting out to next year. So a 1-year enrollment projections, looking at our current enrollment and previous years. The COVID dip is definitely officially over as far as enrollment in Scarborough Public Schools, which I know we've talked about a little bit at a couple of the building committee meetings. Some of the assessing, we've been doing a lot of assessing our current challenges and needs and focusing on our students K through 12. And then we've also started staff feedback sessions in each school building. So Diane, Kate, and myself are going to be going to school buildings to listen in with principals, just to hear from staff about, really asking, and we kind of formulated these as a Leadership Council. The guiding questions for staff right now, one, what resources do you need to create a supportive learning environment for your students? 2, what investments have you found to be most effective in improving student learning? And 3, where do you see gaps in existing resources? So the focus really for getting staff feedback and involvement in the budget, and then also considering as a Leadership Council in our own buildings, is obviously students first. So where are we with students? Where are our needs? And then grounding all of our needs for resources around that. So we've done middle school, and have more to go over the course of this next month. And then I just wanted to kind of publicly remind folks that we have a pretty unique challenge, and this ties back to our budget development from last year, where we've got some ESSER funded positions that are going away. And as I mentioned before, some of these positions originally were to keep class sizes lower, and to recognize that we have additional needs of students, as COVID broke and we had the additional federal funding. Obviously those needs have not gone away, and our enrollment not only has held steady, but is climbing. And so that's an additional challenge that we're going to need to face as a budget, is that we do have some positions that are currently federally funded or funded with federal money that will no longer be so for FY24. So I did want to just note that as an additional challenge for this year. And then also just mention that we are close to having our enrollment study that was part of our progress as a building committee is almost completed. So that should be done by the end of this month, actually, and having that longer range enrollment study, I think, will assist us in our projections and how we build the budget this year.
Just a quick question. ESSER I heard you say federal fund, so just a federal grant or federal.
Right. So that was all part of the federal funding that was COVID related.
Okay.
And pandemic related. And we basically had a a 2-year plan. So it's not, you lose all of the funding all at once, right? So we're trying to avoid that cliff, so to speak, and step down, in terms of, evaluating whether or not those positions are continuing to be necessary, which, we strongly feel they are. And then B, recognizing that, our local budget is going to need to absorb the.
Yeah.
that
Do you know how
cost.
many positions that might be?
For this year, I believe it's 4.
We have
Okay.
6.
And what we're talking to is between 4 and 6. How many of those do we need to?
Yeah.
Factor in.
Okay. Thank you.
No small change, right? It's a challenge.
Are there any other questions for Jeff? Send us an email. Okay. Agenda item 8.0 is the chair report. Mine is very short as well. Also wanted to welcome everybody back from the holiday break, and Happy New Year to everybody. The only other piece I had is that, the Maine School Board Association, is starting a new meeting, I guess, for lack of a better word, something they haven't done in the past, but it's for board chairs around the state. They held their first one on December 7th. And because it's the first time and they're not, they're trying to find their footing and to even see if this is something that was desired. It was more of an open forum and an opportunity for participants to really talk about what they're experiencing in their district. So the long and the short of it was very good. Most of the conversation was around the superintendent role. How do we support the superintendent? How do we search for, there's some superintendent searches going on around the state. So how do we search for, how do we hire, how do we then support when we get a superintendent in the role? So that's where we really started. There was some conversation about contentious board issues around the state. So how other districts have handled that. It varies widely across the state. Some have had absolutely no issues. And to your point, Carolyn, others have been in the news. So there's not a real hard and fast, this is what's happened, because it's completely different experiences and all over the state. So really just this opportunity at that meeting to talk, but we did end just saying that this was a valuable meeting. It actually went on, I think, 45 minutes beyond its time it was supposed to end. So everybody agreed that there was a lot of value in continuing these meetings. So those will be, it looks to be something they will continue going forward. So I'll just report back as those continue. All right, is there any questions for me? All right, so next is the committee reports. So we'll start with finance. Sarah?
So when I was doing this, I had to have my son come and say, I'm like, where's the save button? And he says, it will save for you, Mama. Like my husband was just laughing on the other end of the couch. He's like, you need your son to help you do your report.
Yes, you do.
The roles have changed. So, yes, we held our first finance committee meeting back on the 12th of December, and Kate did a wonderful job leading us through all of the ins and outs of the finance committee, what our roles and responsibilities are. Just from the fiscal year to the budget process. And I found out that we have a really long meetings coming up. Like, oh, nice. So be prepared. So anyway, but she just really gave us a great rundown of what she does and what the finance committee does. And we decided going forward, our meeting's going to be on the fourth Monday of each month at 4:00. And so our next one is on the 23rd, and I will have my agenda on time, promise. I think that's about it. I think, the bulk of the discussion at our next meeting will be about our 2Q numbers.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Carolyn? All right. Frayla is next with policy.
We too held our first organizational meeting on the 14th. We prioritized the policies that are in need of review, sort of triage, open-ended business that was held over from the last time the committees met, missing policies followed by required updated policies. And then I think we set a goal that once all the like necessary urgent matters were taken care of, to make sure we go through those policies so they get a fresh set of eyes. Some of the policies haven't been revised in over 20 years. The next meeting is January 9th. We're going to work through three things. The first is the EBCC, which is the bomb threat policy, which is the subject of our first meeting, to get it ready for our second reading here. The second is the transgendered and gender expansive student policy. That meeting was started before I joined the board. And we're going to continue working through that policy. And then there's a creating a facilities naming procedure policy. We do not have an existing policy. This would be a new policy. And all those materials, I believe, have been uploaded at this point as part of the agenda. I said, shout out to Diane, who put together a phenomenal spreadsheet to keep us organized and moving forward. And I think we'll be able to get the work done.
Yes, thank you, Diane. So much. It was a huge help. We now have a spreadsheet of policies for Scarborough. So we know when they need to be updated, when they were last updated. It's really fantastic. For those like Kate and Carolyn, it's a dream come true. All right, is there any questions for Frayla? All right. Long range facilities, John.
I believe the next meeting is to be scheduled.
Right, thank you. All right.
We're just working on what's going to work for everybody. So as soon as I find out, everyone will know.
Sounds good. All right, communications committee.
We're also working on coordinating everybody's schedules. We will be announcing that shortly, hopefully. And we are looking for more Spotlight Award nominations. So we're going to work on sending out another letter and hopefully getting some additional nominations.
Can I ask a quick question about the Spotlight Award?
Sure.
Those nominations, are those just from the school community, or is it community at wide that can submit nominations?
It is just the school, the school community right now anyway. If you have suggestions, we'll take them.
All right, are there any questions for Jillian? All right, and then our last few committees, I know there's a DEI. Did you have any DEI update? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think I kind of gave it already, but the quick is that they just have established procedures in which to be able to make a decision as a committee. And the next step is that they're going to create, or at least the next on the agenda is to create an overarching goal or plan to meet the charge of this committee. So the decision would be how to meet the charge of the committee. What does that look like? I expect that's going to be an extremely long, many meeting discussion.
Right, and then is there a building steering committee update?
We'll be meeting. I don't have the date right offhand. 20, was it? Yeah, it's coming right up. Oh, well, okay, a couple weeks. And their continued land discussions. There has not been a decision yet. But as soon as there is, we will be notifying the community.
Perfect, thank you. All right, and are there any liaison updates? All right, hearing none, we will move over to Yulia and Colby.
All right, I've got a little bit of a different type of report. My slide's a little different, but it's more of a pretty big thing that happened, a personal recognition of someone. So yesterday, Adam Benditson took the SMAA and school record in the 2 mile, beating the old record, which was only a year old. Adam ran a time of 9:19:65, and he's also the national leader right now. So he's like the best runner in the country currently for the 2 mile. And he's here in our town, and he's a good sport. He's a great guy. And I just wanted to say congratulations to Adam.
Oh, congratulations, Adam.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Going back a little to the middle school, they had the Unified Club sponsored Inclusive Schools Week, December 5th through 9th. And the worldwide theme was unity within our community. They planned Spirit Days with inclusive themes, and Wednesday's theme was Lay on Kindness, and all of the students received a lei when they walked into school that morning. And I was actually there for Monday through Wednesday, doing a little volunteering thing with coding. And everyone was walking around in their PJs and their leis, and it was really cool. They all seemed really excited about it. On the next slide is just some pictures from that. They also made 2 posters. The one on the top has a bunch of glued on pictures of staff and students showing their community and their unity. The other one with the Post-it notes on the bottom is examples of times students felt included. So they all got to write a little sticky note. And each crew decorated a piece of a quilt, and those will be assembled together to make one large unity quilt to be displayed in the main lobby. And on a similar note, on December 9th, 9 students from the Middle School Unified Club and 10 students from the high school buddy system ended Inclusive Schools Week by attending the Special Olympics Maine Inclusion Revolution Youth Summit at the Sheraton at Sable Oaks. And they joined students from all over Southern Maine to talk about what it meant to be a unified champion school and share ideas to promote inclusion and learn ways that other schools promote inclusion. So it seems like it even made its way up to the high school as well. And finally, on the next slide is a little short update from the high school. Boys hockey had quite a few games recently. And there was just a little news clip of that from the Bangor game, if it'll load.
It's almost there.
Unbeaten Scarborough hosting Bangor. 3-1 Red Storm when Jack Bathe possesses and fires Jacob Berry with the traffic in front. The Red Storm go up 4-1. Later in the third, it's 4-2 Red Storm when Olin Peterson lines one up from the slot.
So it said they would play TA on Wednesday. They did unfortunately lose that, but they were undefeated before, so hopefully it'll rebound later on.
Yeah. Thank you, Yulia and Colby. Are there any questions for either? All right, thank you. All right, agenda item 11.0 is new business. I'm going to bundle 11.1 and 11.2. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of December 15th, 2022 executive session and December 15th, 2022 business meeting as presented?
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion? All right, since we're all here, we can vote by hand. All in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, agenda item 11.3 is a motion to approve the board operating protocols. I'm going to do them one by one because I think that'll be the easiest since we have some with amendments. So do I have a motion to approve the first operating protocol as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Yeah, it's unanimous. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 2 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 3 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 4
So moved.
as presented? Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect. It's unanimous. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 5 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Give it,
Sorry.
oh. All in favor? All in favor. Perfect. It's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 6 as presented?
I'd like to offer an amendment.
Okay, so let's have a second first. Or a moved and a,
Second.
so moved and second. Okay. Any discussion? Now you offer your amendment.
Okay, I'd like to offer an amendment to change the language as read. The board will establish annual goals, assess its collective effectiveness by yearly self-evaluation, and address any improvement opportunities identified.
Okay, do I have a second to her amendment?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, so our vote right now is on the protocol as amended. So all in favor of the amendment? All right, so now we will go back and vote on the board operating protocol number 6 as amended. So do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 6 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, very good. Number 7, do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 7 as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion?
like to offer an amendment for number 7.
Yes.
To be as read, to change the language to say, the board will establish annual goals for the superintendent in alignment with overall mission and values of the school district and will evaluate the superintendent annually.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, so is there, all in favor of the amended operating protocol? So that's unanimous. So then we'll return to the main motion, which is, do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 7 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect, thank you, it's unanimous. I guess I could have done this before. I'm gonna bundle operating protocol 8, 9, 10, and 11 because they were all the same. Do I have a motion to approve operating protocols 8, 9, 10, and 11 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Perfect. All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 12?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any discussion?
like to offer an amendment on number 12. So the language will say executive sessions will only be used to discuss subjects that are confidential by law. Board members will be held to the strictest confidentiality regarding executive session subjects and discussions.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the amended language? Perfect. So back to the main motion. Do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 12 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Great, that's unanimous. Perfect. And then the last one, do I have a motion to approve board operating protocol number 13 as presented?
So moved.
Any discussion?
Yes, so like to offer an amendment on that one to keep the language, however, at the end, just to indicate that we will revisit it in a February workshop.
Yes.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? The amendment, Perfect. So then we go back to the original. Do I have a motion to approve, board operating protocol number 13 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect. Thank you, thank you. All right. So 11.4 are appointments. 11.4.1 is the varsity girls lacrosse coach.
So it's in your materials, so
Mhm.
new girls lacrosse coach Taylor Colangelo.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the new varsity girls lacrosse coach?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect, we're unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 12.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?